Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
Good evening or afternoon, as the case may be, and welcome back to Meanwhile Here on Earth on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. If you're listening to our show and would rather be watching it, easy as pie. Go to YouTube, type in KGRA, and then Meanwhile Here on Earth, and every show that we've done here will open up to you, including this one. Subscribe to KGRA, and you can access every one of their shows that they've done, which I believe is several 100,000 at last count. And they are on everything from UFOs to every aspect of the paranormal. Our program this evening: 5 extraordinary women, all experiencers and or UFO abductees, all active in the field of UFO and experiencer studies, research, and outreach, and all mothers. I think this is something of a first for broadcasting, and it's a forum that I would like to come back to now and again as we move into the future. So let me introduce our guests and bring them on one at a time. Since 1990, Kathleen Marden has been a respected investigator of UFO abduction and contact with non-human intelligence, and the author of several books. She is a featured on-camera commentator and an international lecturer. Kathleen earned a BA degree in social work and worked as an educator and in educational services as a coordinator while attending graduate school. She is a practitioner of regressive hypnosis and the quantum healing hypnosis technique. Her interest in UFOs and contact began in 1961, when her aunt and uncle, Betty and Barney Hill, had a close encounter and subsequent abduction in New Hampshire's White Mountains. Kathleen has been the Mutual UFO Network's Experiencer Research Team Director since 2011. Her group of 30 specialists offer support, non-judgmental listening, and referrals to experiencers. She is an advisory board member and consultant to the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Extraordinary Encounters, acronym FREE, and is co-author of Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience, Science Was Wrong, and Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers with the late, great nuclear physicist, scientific ufologist Stanton T. Friedman, with whom she worked closely for nearly 14 years. The Alien Abduction Files, outstanding book, which she co-authored with Denise Stoner, gives in-depth coverage on 2 of her major cases and 4 additional cases that she personally investigated. Her 5th book, Extraterrestrial Contact: What to Do If You've Been Abducted, is a comprehensive guide to UFO abduction. She is a contributor to FREE's Beyond UFOs, the Science and Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Entities, which I believe their second massive edition of the book is going to be published or has just been published. Her essays have been published in several additional books and magazines. In 2018, she and her ERT members and psychologist Don C. Dondieri completed a comprehensive study of 516 experiencers. It was her 3rd major research study on experiencers. Her 50-page report was published in the MUFON 2018 International Symposium Proceedings. Kathleen has given on-camera commentary on the Discovery, History, National Geographic, Destination America, science and travel channels, and on several documentaries. She is a guest co-host on Beyond the Paranormal, a wonderful, really long-established radio show on CBS Radio coming out of Rhode Island with host Paul and Ben Eno. Kathleen has lectured at conferences across the United States and in Canada, Mexico, Brazil, and the United Kingdom. Additionally, she has appeared on a video lecture series for experiencers in China. Her books are available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Autographed copies can be purchased on her website. And her website is Kathleen-Marden.com. And Kathleen, welcome back to Meanwhile Here on Earth.
Thank you, Peter. It's great to be back with you.
Haven't seen you in a week.
Right. I missed you, Peter.
Denise Stoner has been active in the UFO research field for over 30 years. She is the director of the Florida Research Group, an affiliation of UFOCOP. She is a member of MUFON's Experiencers Research Team and is also a Florida MUFON Field Investigator, Florida MUFON Assistant Director, and STAR Team member. Prior to her current position, she was a Florida MUFON State Section Director and Chief Investigator. She also holds educational forums for public and private gatherings for abduction experiencers, which I've had the honor of speaking at. Denise has an educational background in business and psychology and is a certified hypnotist specializing in regressive hypnosis. She has taught classes in stress reduction for 12 plus years for professionals in such fields as medicine and law. Stoner began her research in hypnosis under Dr. Bob Romack in Denver, Colorado. They worked together for 5 years on pain control, smoking cessation, and past life regression research. Denise also worked as a paranormal investigator in the homes of abductees who felt they had been visited by spirits following abductions. She recorded evidence of the development of psychic abilities in individuals following their experiences with UFOs and ETs, and worked on a team with Dr. Romack studying abductees' ability to locate missing people and predict future events. For 12 years, Denise conducted background investigations for the military on recruits seeking highly classified clearances in order to enter nuclear power school looking for a possible future on a nuclear submarine. Prior to her retirement, if you want to call it retirement, military retirement, Denise moved to the Naval Air Warfare Center, Training Systems Division Military Research Facility, where she was the training coordinator for several hundred and military and civilian employees. Denise Stoner is a retired scuba instructor, cave diver, and former research member of the National Speleological, I believe that's Cave Exploring Society, Cave Diving Division. Jesus. Her retirement from the federal government has allowed her to expand her work with UFO research and individual investigation. Denise has appeared on TV and participated in many radio shows like Coast to Coast AM. She is, of course, the co-author, along with Kathleen Marden, of the Alien Abduction Files, the most startling cases of human-alien contact ever reported. She contributed chapters on paranormal experiences to Kathleen Marden's new book, Extraterrestrial Contact. She writes for magazines on request and keeps busy with her research. If you want to contact her, you can do so by her email, which is dstoner1@gmail.com. Deb Jordan Campbell was the central figure in Bud Hopkins' New York Times bestseller and an international bestseller in numerous languages, I might add, Intruders, The Incredible Visitations at Copley Woods, as well as the 1992 CBS miniseries Intruders, under the pseudonym of Kathy Davis to protect her young family. In 1992, she revealed her true identity and co-authored with her sister Kathy Mitchell, Abducted, The Stories of the Intruders Continues. And she has just finished a revised, expanded edition, which we'll discuss it later in the show. While more recently, she rarely makes public appearances, she has appeared on the Discovery Channel's Investigation X, the History Channel's UFO Hunters, the Sci-Fi Channel, Unsolved Mysteries, Sightings, Maury Povich, Danny Bonaducci, Oprah Winfrey's AM Chicago, the Dinny Moore Show in Canada, as well as others. She has been the guest speaker at numerous universities, think tanks, and conferences around the world, as well as guest appearances on numerous radio broadcasts and podcasts. Deb co-hosted her own podcast, Midwest Paratalk with Greg Kebble, and together with Greg, co-founded the paranormal research team, the Paranormal Underground. Her special interest in paranormal research is with electric voice phenomena, and she has collected many impressive examples of this over the last several years. She is a wife, mother of 4, and grandmother of 8. She lives in north central Indiana, was a member of the disaster action team for a local chapter of the American Red Cross, is a member of Mensa, a licensed cosmetologist, and works full-time at an automobile electronics parts supplier, which I believe you've just retired from. Welcome to the show, Deb. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And yes, you are no longer working at the
I am
automotive.
retired.
Yeah, you're retired like Deb and Kathy are retired. Our next guest is running a little bit late, Tiffany Mack, but I'm going to introduce her now and bring her on when she arrives. Tiffany Mack obtained her degree in broadcast journalism from the University of Kentucky, Lexington, in 2000. In addition to working as a producer with periodic hosting appearances on the Gralien Report podcast beginning in 2016, in the past, Tiffany has also worked as a weekly co-host of Shooting from the Lip, the KT Unearthly show with co-host Kevin Hale. Tiffany has traveled extensively and lived in Greece for a number of years, where she was employed near the NATO missile firing installation, NAMFI acronym, an extensive missile firing range located in Souda Bay on the island of Crete. Tiffany's broadcast experience also includes employment with National Public Radio beginning in 1998, and as an ET contactee abductee herself, her current interests include study of the unexplained, as well as issues related to consciousness and events or occurrences that fall outside the normal range of human experiences. She is co-host of the weekly radio show Universal Secrets Podcast, and you can follow her on Twitter at Tiffany Mack, and then capital ET. And fifth guest is N.K. Kranda. N.K. went to school for horticulture sciences and graduated with highest honors. She then continued her education in the fields of psychology, PTSD and trauma therapies, art, biology, psychics, history, and shamanism. She currently works in experiencer research and preservation and has the honor of interviewing some of the most incredible people the field has to offer. Her interest in contactees and experiencers began when she volunteered as a MUFON chapter secretary in San Antonio. After writing way too many reports, she found her true interest was in the people that quietly came to meetings to tell their incredible stories. She taught them to fight stigma, to never stop telling their stories, and to honor themselves because they survived. NK, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth.
Hi, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. What we're going to do to begin is I'm going to ask each of you to make an opening statement. It can be as long as you want. It can cover literally anything that you want. How you became involved in the field, what you actually find yourself doing in this work at this point, how you do what you do, why you've dedicated a part of your life to being a public person in this work. And again, on your own terms, in your own time. Deb, I'm going to ask you to lead off. I know. Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking,
Well, I didn't set out in life to do this.
Yeah.
This kind of came to me when Bud first began the investigation into my experiences.
And we're talking here about Bud Hopkins.
Bud Hopkins.
Yeah.
Yes. When Bud Hopkins first started his investigation into my reported experience of June 30, 1983, was never my intention for him to write a book about me or my family. Yeah. My sole reason for reaching out to him was because I was desperate for help and I thought this man could help me. And I just wanted to be normal and have a normal life for my kids. It was not in my character at that time in my life to even write to an author of a book, let alone travel on a bus for 17 hours to meet him personally. I had never been anywhere without my parents that far until that point in my life. And I was terrified. I had a panic attack halfway there and wanted to jump off the bus because I realized how crazy what I was doing actually sounded. Yeah. But after a couple of years and a lot of talks with Bud and my family, we decided to go ahead and he begged us to let him write this book. And at first we were all like, no, that's not what we want. And then when we finally did decide to go ahead and let him write the book, it was decided that we would all have pseudonyms. And even the place where it happened, Copley Woods, is actually a pseudonym. Yeah. Because we had strange people showing up in our backyard before he even wrote his book. Oh, God. So, but, and in the beginning of his investigation, a lot of old memories started to come back, not just for me, but for other members of my family and friends. And also a lot of strange stuff started happening and a lot of strange stuff started increasing. And it wasn't just me, it was family and friends that were seeing and experiencing some of these things too. And after Bud wrote Intruders, and then Intruders became a mini-series, yeah, I went with him a few times, a bunch of times when he would go to speak about it at conferences. And eventually he coaxed me onto the stage. And I almost thought I was going to pass out that first time because I'm not a public speaker and I was just freaked out, but I did it. And as the years passed and my experiences became less physical and more psychic for any other way to put it, spiritual, and I started changing and growing, and I started to lose the fear that I had in the beginning. And I started to meet so many people like me that were afraid to speak out and just wanted to be normal. I was the queen of invisibility. I spent my entire youth trying to be invisible and just be normal. That's all I ever wanted. I wanted to get involved in church. I wanted to get involved in, after school activities, but I was scared to because I was afraid they'd find out about this. I just wanted to be normal. And I didn't want this to happen, but it did. And it's a part of me. And I began, after meeting so many people like me, and I felt compelled. I was fortunate. I was blessed because I had support of family, friends, neighbors, coworkers, almost everyone in my family. Everyone in my life supported me, and most of them had experiences with me at some point. And I know I learned a long time ago that that's not the norm. Most people don't have that. And I felt so blessed, and I was so blessed to have had Bud for 3 years solid. And so I felt like I wanted to pay it forward. And I began to feel like that was my destiny to speak out. And, you know, as I got older, I started to care less and less about what other people thought of me, which made it easier. You know, I mean, but once my kids were old enough and were adults, you know, and old enough also to take care of themselves a little bit out there away from mom, you know, and I also felt like if I'm going to write a book, I need to put my name on it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I did it. So I understand people using pseudonyms because I did that for my whole family as an experiencer. But if I'm going to become, you know, vocal about it, and I expect people to take me seriously, then I need to own it. And so that's why we wrote, my sister and I wrote the Abducted and used our real name. And I've used my real name ever since. And I just feel like it's my job. I feel like I was born to help people through this whole experience, this process, and help them come out on the other end and feel stronger. You know, it's never, for me, I don't think it's ever going to really end. I'm going to continue to grow and learn until I take my last breath here. But I feel like if I can help one person come through it and go from where I was at before I met Bud to where I'm at now, then I did what I came to do.
Yeah.
So that's my story.
You know, Deb, we met within a year of your starting to work with Bud, and we've known each other now since I think 1984 or so.
Mm-hmm.
And you have grown in stature in my mind and my heart ever since. You could have just kind of reaped the whirlwind of becoming the subject of an international bestseller and a made-for-television miniseries, but your generosity of spirit and your absolutely being unaffected and being there for other people, like paying it forward, like you say, is an inspiration to me and a lot of people. And it's great to have you back on the show.
Well, I appreciate that you invited me with all these wonderful women.
Well, you're getting the exact same pay that you got last time too. So watch for that check.
That's
They
okay.
sometimes get lost
I'm
in the
used to
mail, but Kathleen Marden, would you give us your opening remarks as long as you'd like and whatever you'd like to cover?
Thank you, Peter. I'd be happy to. Well, many years ago, I have to say that I was a materialist. And among those investigators who would not accept an abduction claim unless there was substantial physical evidence to back it up. This is the way I was trained. I assumed that everyone was seeking publicity because this is what I heard coming from investigative groups, skeptics, pseudo-skeptics, and the media. I had a personal paradigm shift when I realized that without a massive amount of evidence, the only people who can determine if they have truly had these experiences are the experiencers themselves. And I witnessed the pain that abductees experienced when they reported their events and were blindsided with doubt. Many were told they needed a psychiatrist, they were lying, they were attention seekers, or their experiences simply did not occur. I never did that. I was always kind, but I became very distressed when experiencers began to speak out and talk about their history with investigators and how they were treated and how. This is when I became more supportive and felt that I wanted to give one-on-one assistance to experiences. I became an experiencers advocate and taught experiencers how to collect evidence to determine whether their experiences were ET related or something else. We developed a silent network of sorts where experiencers could feel safe to speak of their events with a non-judgmental but emotionally supportive listener. Denise Stoner and I have worked together for many years, and currently we host a support group for experiencers who have moved beyond fear and feel a calling to help others. In the current climate of limited UAP disclosure, I think that it is important for experiencers to feel safe, to have privacy, because some support group hosts believe that a witch hunt for experiencers has begun. The only reason for this behavior is to target a subgroup in our society and in other societies for bullying. Many of these people have experienced extraordinary pain caused by their fellow humans, and many experiencers are attempting to project love for the benefit of everything living on our world.
Yeah.
These kind, loving people should not be bullied by those who gain satisfaction out of hurting people, nor should the intelligence community target them or suspect that they are ETs living on our planet, possibly planning to take it over. We must understand that alien abduction is the most taboo subject regarding UFO disclosure. Government officials, both former and present, cannot have limited disclosure as long as ETs can abduct humans with impunity. Therefore, UFO abduction is the most uncomfortable topic in mainstream society, and what may be causing what I have been told is this new witch hunt underway.
Yeah. Thank you, Kathleen. You know, you and I have been friends for an awfully long time, and I remember that period of transition for you where you were a public person in the work, doing what you speak of, but you were not yet ready to talk about your own history of experiences. And a profound memory for me is just thinking back on you describing, I believe it was that morning, when you as a young person were finishing breakfast and about to head out for school, and your mother received a call from your aunt, which was your Aunt Betty Hill, beginning to tell your mother about what had happened to her and your uncle. I remember just going right through me. And of course, I was there in the audience when you essentially outed yourself and got a standing ovation that any actor would kill for. Not that you act, you are the real deal. And thank you for the work that you continue to do and the fact that you are such an advocate for these people who many still live, the title of one of David Jacobs' book, Secret Life, that are not willing to come forward yet and long to speak to people like you and Kathy and Denise and NK and Tiffany. And Tiffany, I'm going to bring you on next. We read your introduction. I know you were running late because your daughter got a pretty bad sunburn today. Can you give us an update on how she's doing?
She's doing fine, as good as you can be. She has 3rd-degree burns on her face. I am not a happy mom right now because, when it comes to parental rights, sometimes you have 50-50 custody, and I can't control what happens when my children are not, in my care. And so I'm spent the day at the ER and just not very happy.
Yeah.
You want the best for your children, and it's just heartbreaking. And people are irresponsible sometimes, and I hate using that and giving somebody an out. But yeah, she's going to be fine. But it's been a long day. We're talking about experiencers and their families and how we talk about I know NK and I have mentioned that we talk about our children being special, and of course they are. All of them are precious and all of them are special. But, control, not having control, that leads into a topic of abductions and contact experiences. There's been a lot of situations, I guess, that have prepared me for this day, but we don't have a control, and this is part of that that conversation that Kathleen was just talking about. Is you, as an experiencer, you go through so many traumas on a human level, and that goes along with it. We talk about how we as adults, consenting adults, even we have some of our rights taken away, and it's frustrating, and it's just another day in the life of a bizarre world that we live in, I guess. But hoping for the best. That's all I can do.
Exactly. We'll get back to what you do, and in a way, you come at it from a different angle because you are the host of a weekly radio show podcast. So your level of contact with people is different. NK Kranda, join us. And how would you like to begin this? Your mic is muted.
No, it's not.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I can hear you now.
We're ready.
Tiffany, anytime you want someone to break their kneecaps, just give me a call, okay?
I mean, girl.
I mean, mamas don't play, but it's good to see you again, girl. It's good to see everybody. My name is NK Kranda, and I'm an experiencer, and I'm an experiencer, preservationist, and researcher. I can't even remember my own job today. I've been dealing with a second grader, and I've also been dealing with a brand new junior in high school today. And we also did back to school shopping. So I think I flew on my eyeliner and I came in here. But so basically, everything that I do is about teaching people to fight stigma, that I'm an advocate for experiencers. I teach them how to advocate for themselves, that, you should always keep telling your story, that if you survive it, you get to define it. Don't let an expert or an author or a TV producer tell you what happened to you. It's between you and yourself to decide. And I'm really blessed to not be associated as a UFOologist or a doctor or a therapist. It's just peer-to-peer, experiencer to experiencer. And I really just love enjoying the things that people tell me. And they find me in the most organic ways by either referral from other professionals. Everybody loves my nude beach in Austin story where I was sitting there getting a tan and an experiencer came and sat next to me and we started talking about lucid dreaming. So they just tend to find me anywhere. And just like she said, I can't remember her name. I'm sorry. I think it was Miss Deb. You said that you didn't choose this life, that it kind of came to you and you can't really get away from it.
Deb. Yeah.
So it's the same for me. I really didn't seek out this work. I really didn't, I wasn't an ET type of kid. I loved the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind and things like that. But as soon as I got older and I got involved a little bit more in the MUFON crowd, I realized that I was an experiencer and that I had been my entire life, and that I was also raising an experiencer child. And then when I got a little bit older and I got a job at a high school, I was an at-risk mentor for teenagers. And one of my at-risk teens, her family gave her up and they were threatening to give her to the state. They just didn't want her anymore. So I went through the process of becoming her legal guardian so that she didn't have to go to the state. And then I found out that she was an experiencer as well. So I'm an experiencer, preserving all this testimony and talking to other experiencers and teaching them coping mechanisms. And I also live with two other little experiencers that are going through their wonderful phases of growing up and what life means and what these experiences mean. And yeah, I'm very tired. Oh my God, I'm tired all the time, but I have a great life and I'm happy to be here.
We're happy to have you here. Again, one of the reasons that I asked the five of you to come on, aside from the fact that I have tremendous respect for what you're doing and who you are, is that you're all mothers. And one of probably and I'm saying this as somebody who is not a parent, and even if I was, I would never be a mother. It's just the way it's worked out. But I think, having worked as assistant to Bud Hopkins for many years and taken part in several hundred case investigations, even in small ways, and then gone on my own over the decades, that one of the greatest challenges facing any decent person in this field is it's challenging enough working with adults, but when children are involved, sometimes yours and certainly other people's, and how adults try to protect their children, sometimes in ways that are counterproductive. Let me give you one example, and I'm going to keep my comments to a minimum on this show, but this comes from my experience. When I was a young person, my sister Helen and I had a profoundly life-changing UFO sighting. It involved a completely unambiguous 5 silvery white disc-shaped objects, clear blue sky, over the neighbor's house. It was such a challenge for me to accept that it became a repressed memory and took many years to reemerge. My sister never forgot it, but when it reemerged in many years, 14 odd years later, it did so with a vengeance and changed my life. I remember clearly, after they had gone away, coming into the house late morning to tell our mother, and walking through the house and then standing in the dining room, looking into the kitchen where she was at the stove, as I recall, making Helen and I grilled cheese sandwiches for lunch. And I said, "Mom," and I believe this is word for word, "Mom, Helen and I just saw some things in the sky over the Parker's house that look like flying saucers from the movies." It's in the 60s. My mother turned and looked at me seriously for an extended number of seconds. And I remember thinking, this is the way grown-ups look at each other. And after a fashion, she went back to doing what she was doing. More than 14 years later, when Helen and I first sat down with our parents after inviting ourselves over to dinner, we relayed our memories of that day, and I told my mom about how she had handled it. She didn't remember it. My point in saying it is I think her intuition was extraordinary, rather than a reflexive that I've dealt with many times, and I'm sure you have, of a parent going, "Oh, honey, you just thought it looked like that and it was a this or that," or a grown-up child reflecting on, "It happened to me and you tried to make me deny it," or a parent of a grown-up looking back and saying, "I wish I had handled that differently." My mother simply acknowledging it with a look of real contact was the best thing she could have done at that moment. That understood. I'd like to speak to each of you about how you have interacted with young people at one point or another, your own, or children of clients or people that have come to work with you. And Deb, I'd like to begin with you because you are on record the longest with your own young kid.
Well, my kids, when they were really young and we were staying, at my mom's house, they had a few incidents that really scared them badly. With one thing Robbie said was a red spider on the wall, and said that the little man with the big eyes was coming out of the closet to get his little brother. And then us being awakened by screams, Robbie not being able to move, and my younger son covered with blood, smeared all the way up the wall, but not really responding. And then we had to take him to the emergency room where a doctor says, well, he's stuck something up his nose that, and I said, there's nothing in their room that they could get up there that would do that. And he said, well, then he stuck his finger up there. And I said, look at his fat little finger and then look at that nostril. That did not happen either. And he's like, well, they cauterized him and sent him home. His nose continued to bleed on and off until he still has nosebleeds today sometimes.
Yeah.
But we decided early on, because they were so afraid, and I was kind of a train wreck myself, that we wouldn't discuss these things within earshot of them, because
Yes.
I didn't want them to be more scared. And also later on, I was kind of taking a page from Bud's book. I didn't want to contaminate whatever memories they may have come out later when they get older by overhearing things when they're little, and then, somehow assimilating them and making them their own memory. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Something like that. So that's what we always did. We always didn't really speak around them about any of it. When Bud did actually interview them, he was very gentle about it, very, very carefully chose his words so not to get them shook up. And he even had Robbie draw him some pictures, of what he saw. And Bud thought it was interesting that he, even at his young age, he could differentiate between E.T., which he loved, and the little guy with the big eyes in the closet. They were two different separate. Robbie drew two different separate things.
Yeah.
But anyway, years passed, and now my younger son, who was the nosebleed kid, he still has strange things happen to him. He's a 40-year-old man, and he'll come and talk to me about things once in a while that freak him out a little bit. And I just listen mostly. My older son, he doesn't want to talk about it. He's no desire to talk about any of it. And that's fine too. I respect that. He is the father of my granddaughter, who will be 15 in September. When she was about 5 or so, for a short period of time, I'm going to say maybe 3 months or so, she started having night terrors. And the thing that got my son upset at me was that when she woke up screaming, she kept telling her dad that the big-headed guys are going to come in her window and take her. And my son called me. I didn't know what's going on. My granddaughter was, at that point, I was picking her up on Friday and staying with me. She was staying with me until Sunday.
Yeah.
We were best. She always used to say, Nini, my best friend. and I waited 27 years for her. And so I was going to spend every minute of time I could with her. But Robbie called me, and he was furious. I had never heard him talk to me like that before that point, and since then. And he was mad, and he was almost yelling at me over the phone. What have you said to her? What has she seen? I'm like, nothing. I swore up, and if we were watching television and something came on the TV about, aliens, even if it was a commercial, we'd change the channel.
Yep.
We'd move along, and try to distract her. So, and we never spoke about it around her, anything. We didn't hardly, me being here in the middle of nowhere in Indiana, we never speak about it, my husband and I, at all. I mean, it's not conversation in our house generally, and I'm kind of isolated here. So, and I told him, we have not said anything. He was so frustrated and angry with me because he couldn't believe that something was happening, and that he had to believe that I had somehow exposed her to this and scared her. And I'm like, it broke my heart. It broke my heart, but I understood. And he did not allow her to come and spend the night with me for like 3 months, which just devastated me. But I understood where he was coming from. And there's nothing I could do. I'm not the parent. And so he told me when he finally said she could come and stay with me again, we talked on the phone, and he said, I had to make her curtains stay shut with clips. I had to, I bought her a radio. I bought her a nightlight. I even took a can of Glade air freshener, and I made a new label on it. And I told her that it was anti-alien spray, and drew a big circle on it with a red circle with a slash over the face. And I sprayed around her room every night. And finally the night terrors stopped.
Yeah.
So finally stops. She can come back and stay with me. Years pass. Now the kid is 14 and she's here with me last year. I think I told you about this, Peter. We're just watching TV and chilling one night together. She was staying with me for like a week, and Ancient Aliens, came on, and I picked up the remote to change the channel out of habit.
Yeah.
And she looks over at me and she said, "Hey, Nene." And she said, "Do you believe in aliens?"
Well,
I just looked at her for a second, and I said, "Yep, I do." That's all I said. And she smiled at me and she said, "Cool, so do I." And I said, "Okay."
Good.
And I never said another word about it.
Good.
And because now I feel like, okay, I've opened the door. If I don't know, obviously she believes in aliens, so there's a reason why. And I don't have anything to do with it, I don't think. So hopefully eventually someday she'll talk to me about it. Now, her dad and mom did tell her about my book and gave her a little history background now that she's a little older, and she just thinks it's interesting. And I mean, she hasn't really commented on any of it, but she just thinks it's cool that I believe in aliens. So that's how we dealt with it in my family. I'm not saying it's the right way. I didn't have any idea what to do. There's no manual or book to tell you what to do. We just kind of muddled through as best we could. And
Deb, it sure sounds like your intuition kicked in the right way. And in a moment like that particular moment, that any parent of any child who may have had a UFO-related experience, and they just ask you that question, you can either lie or tell the truth and hope for the best. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you sure made the right decision, and that you've got a wonderful granddaughter, and she'll sort it out for herself.
She's smart.
Tiffany. Yeah, exactly. Tiffany, would you jump in and speak either to this subject relative to your girls or to any other young people that you've dealt with or are aware of who are wrestling with this?
We've talked before that this is a family thing. I believe that not only I come from a military family, and I feel like my grandfather was an instigator in all of this. And, I was sort of primed for military from the beginning. I was accepted to the Air Force Academy, and all of these great things were going to happen. And then I had these 9 pilots tell me, don't go. Wow. And I'm like, what the heck? And my grandfather, I was one of 30 women across the country that I had a presidential nomination, not just a regular old application to the Air Force. And so, it was, there was something. You're talking about intuition. We all have it. We don't all listen to it. We should. So with me, what happened was I listened to those 9 pilots because they had to be talking from some type of experience that I was not privy to. But comes out, I end up graduating from UK in broadcast journalism and working for NPR and 2 different Fox channels. And I ended up graduating and deciding to travel a little bit. Well, I was 3 days in Crete, Greece, and all of a sudden I get a job with the Department of Defense dropped in my lap. 3 days. I was like, how the heck does this happen? There are no synchronicity, or there's no coincidence. It's all synchronicity. This was meant to happen. So I think I got drugged through the line of government military, and they just kept popping things up at me. And finally it stuck. And, that was where I was working on a NATO base. I was the youngest female contractor in all of the Mediterranean. I was pretty much stuck on this base, transferring and transitioning buildings into housing for our military during Operation Iraqi Freedom and during that time period. And I didn't realize what was happening, but there were times where I would have third shift operations. So I would be there all night long, and I was the only one in the building. I was waiting for people to come through sometimes, and it was not always the best job, but it paid well, and I learned that you can work at night and not sleep and get around during the day. It does work. You can do it. So sleeping on the beach was pretty good. But yeah, so, I was there, and that's when I first started having some of these strange instances where of missing time. I would check in, get everything situated, and then hours would be missing. So I had Belgian Shepherds while I was there. I was very well secured. I had a male and a female. They were around 100 to 140 pounds, and they were some solid animals, and they were not going to let anything happen to me. So I would take them. I got so scared, so freaked out that I started to bring one of my dogs with me. And that's saying something. You're bringing a 140-pound dog to work because you're scared of being there. Something's going on, and you can't explain it, and you don't know what's going on. I had no interest in aliens or UFOs. It was not in my realm of thinking. I was, I was a swimmer. I was a runner. I was an athlete. I was gobbling up books day and night. And this had nothing to do with my interests. And then all of a sudden, the strangest things start to happen. And then that progresses on. I end up coming back to the States. And I had two beautiful daughters after a very, very hard time period. When I was 19 years old, my gynecologist said, "You're not going to have kids. You have severe endometriosis. You're just not going to be able to, it's going to be very hard." So when I was 25, I came back from Greece, and I came to have a surgery, and that was supposed to go in and check things out. And I ended up finding out that my scarring was so bad, the adhesions were so bad, there was not one place for me to have an egg implanted. And this is how they said it. They did a complete, they cleaned you out. For some reason, my brain is not working right now. But my gynecologist, who I'd known since I was 15 years old, said, I don't know why we didn't do this sooner. And then she said, it looks like, she goes, "How many abortions have you had?" Whoa. And this is a hard thing because I'm a Catholic, and this is how I've grown up. She told me at 19 I wouldn't have kids. I'm not having abortions here. This is not the kind of person I am. I want children. I am desperate for children. And she's told me from the beginning that I wouldn't have them. Well, now she's telling me that it looks like I've had 10, 12 abortions. Gosh. And I'm like, how is that possible? What does that mean? And that's a lot in itself to try to understand and get through your head. Yes, I was a young person, but I wanted children, and that would be the last thing. So when you have somebody who's saying, it looks like you've had quite a few abortions, what the hell's going on? And I mean, I'm bawling, I'm crying my eyes out. I'm leaning on my mom, we're bawling. And she's like, "You will never have kids." And when I did get pregnant, it was such a surprise. And what I heard, I had started having my major visitations while I was pregnant. I still didn't know what they were. I knew that I was having these people or entities popping into my room and into my life, and I didn't understand it. I really thought it was more of like a supernatural, like a ghost phenomenon than I did anything else, because I didn't have anything to relate it to. So my experiences grew heavy when I was pregnant, and I had a visit, and they said, "This is our gift to you." And I really didn't understand because I didn't know I was pregnant yet. So I go in like the next day, next few days, something like that. And shabam, I am pregnant. And I'm like, this is it. What is it? Immaculate conception? Am I Mary? What the heck? And I didn't believe it. It took me so long to believe it because it just wasn't in the cards for me, I thought. And we were looking at options for, adoption and things like this. And that was probably a really defining moment in my life, because now I really didn't know what I was up against. And so, time goes by, we I have this amazing, beautiful child with, angelic features. And now she's a little sassy. If y'all have seen her, Mad Max, she's a little sassy, but she's brilliant. And it's like, it's amazing being her mom and seeing that there's so many similarities, and she just takes it one day at a time in stride, and it doesn't phase her like it would phase an adult coming into it in this same way. She started seeing these orbs at like 2 years old and would try to explain it to me. And how she explained the orbs to me, she called them the little things. Now, this is a 2-year-old, and I've told this story before because I find that it's really important when it comes to children and how they develop, and how some of them develop a lot quicker than others.
And Tiffany, I'm going to have to ask you to hold that thought.
Sure.
Because we're about to go to break. This is Peter Robbins with Meanwhile Here on Earth. My guest, Tiffany Mack, N.K. Kranda, Denise Stoner, Kathleen Marden, and Deb Jordan-Kauble, and we will be back in about 3 minutes. Well, we've all had a deja vu experience all over again, to paraphrase Yogi Berra. Here we are back, and I'm going to ask Tiffany Mack to pick up right where she left off, talking about her daughter's orb experience and how she explained it, and then talk a bit about how you have addressed contact experiences with your daughters.
So I was sort of mentioning the fact that my daughter had been seeing what I considered to be orbs, but she was too little to have that word. So what she called them were the little things, which makes sense. And I would ask, because she was looking up and looked fearful. So she was looking around the room and seeing things, and her eyes were definitely following things around the room. And I tried to get her to open up about it. I was like, what exactly are you looking at? There's nothing here. What do you see? And, she said, there are all of these like little bubbles and little dots. And I'm like, okay, is she having a seizure? What's, because I couldn't see them. So I just, didn't really have any concept, because I'd never seen orbs like that. At that point. So she said, I said, well, what do they do? And she said, well, you see this? You see these, Mommy? And I said, yes. She goes, these are my veins. And I said, okay. And I said, well, what do they do? And she said, they go inside and they go into my veins. And I said, well, why do they do that? She said, to check my blood to see if I'm healthy. And I said, do they do that to Mommy? And she said, no, silly, they already have yours. So, I mean, I'm getting schooled by this 2.5-year-old who's, only going to preschool like 1 day a week just for the entertainment value. And I don't understand where it's coming from, because I haven't talked about any of my experiences with my babe. She was a baby to me. She was an infant. She's still a toddler. But, I'm thinking, okay, so we can deal with this. It's just a matter of taking it all in, letting it process, and then starting to realize that maybe what I'm seeing are not hallucinations, or ghosts. Maybe this is a different phenomenon. Yeah. And so I really didn't have anybody to talk to about this. But I hadn't seen a UFO before until she was probably 3 years old. And I mean, that blew my mind. I was sitting out on my patio on my lanai in Destin, Florida, on the beach, watching the moon rise over the ocean, and the water was just smooth as glass. And I see this light, brightest white light I've ever seen. And it comes directly down and it goes into the water. And then it was not like fireworks or a big explosion. And I really didn't know what it was, but I was like, this is going to be all over the news. And so of course the next day it wasn't on the news. Right. And so I tried to look up where, all of these lights, like how do I figure out what that was? And finally I was like, maybe I saw a UFO. So I'm, learning the whole the process is difficult when you're not involved in this
Sure.
world. And it took a lot for me to get to the point of rationalizing what was going on, realizing that these are honest to God phenomenon that are happening to people. It's not just me. It's not just my daughter. And when I start expanding my sort of my viewpoint and starting to look it up and read, and I start to realize that we're not alone. This is not a unique phenomenon. This is a worldwide phenomenon.
Correct.
And our children are witnessing and learning and growing and developing in a new way. And if it comes down to it, I do have Rh negative blood. I don't know if that has much of an impact on my family lineage or my ability to share something with my daughter, whether we're a little bit more likely to have these types of experiences. I'm still learning, and the reason I put myself out there is because I don't want people like me going through such a hard time in silence or being in a position where they're constantly getting the negativity, the harassment, the stigma that is associated with it. You become isolated, and that's the last thing that we need. And
Exactly.
especially as mothers going through this with children and grandchildren, that this is starting to happen to. We are opening up now, which I think is necessary. The internet can help. It can also do some damage, but letting people know that this is a legitimate phenomenon and letting mothers know and other experiences know that they're not alone is the biggest thing that I think is going for us, people who are in this world. We need to help people understand what they're going through, help them process it to the best of their ability. And,
Correct.
There are some good resources out there, and women like us and investigators and historians like you, we need those people coming together and helping to promote the learning. We need that.
Well
and
said.
I think that will help with the stigma. We're already being really publicized all over the airwaves and the TVs. We're there. People are there. But you need to find the right people who are going through it, not to benefit from it in a financial aspect. Yes, that might be nice, but this needs to be a heartfelt process. This needs some people who really put their blood, sweat, and tears into it, because our children are going to need that. Our children need that, and it's just part of the way. And I think that people that you have here and the people who listen, these are the kinds of people who need to help promote it and promote maybe even enlightened consciousness.
Yeah. Thank you, Tiffany. I'm going to ask you, N.K. Kranda, to pick up essentially on what Tiffany has shared with us here, and to start with how you have addressed these contacts and paranormal aspects of your daughter's lives with them.
Absolutely. I'd like to start at the beginning, actually. It's like first
Please.
things first is that Tiffany reminded me about something, is that when I first found out I was pregnant, it was at a great big military hospital on a base on the East Coast. And I thought that I thought I was having an ectopic pregnancy because I had positive pregnancy tests, but I was having severe pain on one side. And it was the perfect amount of time. And, Google said, oh my God, your uterus is going to explode. Go to the ER right now. So I went to the ER and they took a whole bunch of pictures and scans. They confirmed the pregnancy. And they said, okay, come back tomorrow and we're going to have obstetrician come in and talk to you and everything. And I said, okay. Wouldn't confirm that it was an ectopic pregnancy, wouldn't show me the scan, wouldn't give me a scan, wouldn't do anything. So just waiting as long as a mother can possibly wait. And I get to obstetrics and they're very cavalier. They come in the room, she reads the sheet and it says pregnancy with threatened abortion, which essentially means that there's a pregnancy, but under their medical jurisdiction, they don't think it's going to to happen. So they did the ultrasound. They didn't talk to me the entire time. I'm asking all these questions. And finally I say, like, how's the fetus? Like, is it okay? Do I have an ectopic pregnancy? And she goes, well, there's no fetus, but you don't have an ectopic pregnancy. You just have a little clump of cells right here. It's about 4 to 6 weeks. So it's not a fetus yet. It's really just an empty eggshell. And I said, what? And she said, yeah, you're probably going to miscarry. And if you'd like us to give you the medication to help along with that, we can give you that today. And I just burst into tears. And the man I was married to at the time was a medical professional, said, hey, you know, her levels have been going up in her blood test for this pregnancy. Why are you so certain she's going to have a miscarriage? And she said, yeah, looking at this ultrasound, I'd bet my career on it. She's going to miscarry. Let us know if you want the medication. And she left the room. And I was so completely and utterly devastated. And I went up to the front desk. You know, this is my first child. This is my first pregnancy. I'm terrified. And they said, hey, come back in 10 days and we'll go ahead and recheck if you haven't miscarried by then. So I chose not to take the medicine. It was the longest 10 days of my life. And for whatever reason, like this calmness just came over me, because of course I had to tell my parents and everything. And I said, you know, I just don't think she's right. I don't think she's right. I don't think I'm going to miscarry. I don't think it's an empty eggshell. I said, something just feels like it's going to be okay. And I went in and I had a different obstetrician. I got another ultrasound, and within 3 minutes he said, congratulations, there's the heartbeat. Hit print, and I had a picture of my new baby girl. So it was amazing going from, we're so medically sure that you're going to miscarry and that's an empty eggshell, that we're willing to give you the medication to help you dilate and force this out, versus, by the way, here's a heartbeat, everything's fine. So just the shock of it just really made me very distrustful of medicine. It made me very distrustful of the military. I actually ended up having a home birth at home with 2 licensed midwives, and my husband was an EMT at the time. And now all that was great. But watching my daughter grow up and knowing the things that I had been through, it made me extremely protective of her. And I'm so fortunate that I got to stay home with her for those first few years, because just like Tiffany's daughter, she would tell me she would see things in the sky. We lived in Colorado Springs at that time. She would see little people running around. She would stand up in her crib and we could hear her on the baby monitor just talking animatedly. Not a baby babbling, but the correct pauses and giggles and like enunciations of like her talking to someone like they were in the room and there was nobody down there. Another thing that I remember is that when she was almost 2, she stood up in her crib and she said, Mommy. I said, yeah. She goes, there's a man standing in my room and he has no head and I don't like it. I'm like, kiddo, I don't like that either. Let's go sleep upstairs. So we went and slept upstairs, and she's always been extremely sensitive ever since she was young. And that falls into my 0 to 6 category that I have in my research, which I know you've heard of before, that from 0 to 6, that's when they're the most active. They have the most experiences. They haven't been trained by the world and school and church yet that you're not supposed to see these things or be able to do these things. And I think it's because they're closest to their source, you know, whatever the source of the universe is, whether it's God or some type of energy or ETs or whatever. But 0 to 6 has always been the most active for me. And then it tapers down until they get to puberty. And that's when the really sensitive experiencer kids just explode. The 12 to 16, it's when everything just starts really coming forward. And I don't know if it has to do with hormonal surges. I don't know if it has to do with, you know, they're kind of checking out their reproductive system and they're trying to see what kind of person they're going to be. I'm still researching that because it's so hard to get parents and kids in that age group willing to talk to me and go on record. So that's something that I'd really like more of, is more preteens and teenagers that are experiencers. And then after that, you know, you go from 18 to 65, where you've got your work blinders on and school and bills and everything else. And you just really, even if you are an experiencer, most of the time you can't pay attention to it. And then it kind of circles back again into this beautiful circle of life where 65 until death, life has slowed down. You're retired. You know, you have more time to pay attention to things, to feel things. You know more than you did when you were a young adult. And once again, as you get closer to dying, you're going back to the source of the universe from where you came from. And I've seen it in a restaurant where I almost burst into tears, where this little girl, what mama was leading her around by her hand, because, you know, there's a very approximate period of 5 minutes and 10 seconds where you can put a baby in a high chair and they will eat food and be quiet. And then you have to walk them around again. So that she just came up to this old man who was about 98 and he had oxygen and you could tell he wasn't doing well. And to all of our amazement, she just crawled up in his lap and she just gave him like such a big hug. And I was thinking about it and I said, I wonder why that happened. And the older I am now, and I'm thinking that, you know, maybe because she was so young and he was so old, they just had that connection with one another. Like they understood one another and they just approached each other and it was amazing. So for my kids and what I do when they see things and when they want to talk about it, first of all, I listen, you know, just I shut my mouth. I listen. I try to encourage them to talk more about it. If they're scared, you know, there's certainly things that we can try to do. Like my daughter really loves to sage our house if she feels like something is scary. The other day, she ended up drawing a Beetlejuice door because she thought that she could go in and visit the caseworker, Juno, from Beetlejuice. And my 17-year-old actually has what she believes to be a guardian spirit that follows her around, and it will play with a birthday balloon and kind of pet her hair and things like that. So definitely listening, most importantly, validating. You know, you don't have to agree with your kid that these things are happening. You don't have to go out of your mindset and say, I absolutely 100% believe you. But the validation and the listening is so important, because when I was young, I didn't have anyone like that in my life. And I had a really beautiful experience in a church where some entity or spirit or something actually was playing with me with a green marble. I've told the marble story several times, so I won't waste time with that. But for me, it's a matter of not only protecting my children, but, you know, letting them know that this is just weird things that are happening. It doesn't necessarily mean you're weird. You know, mama's got you. We're going to be okay. We're going to make our way through this. And, you know, when it goes over to the preservation side, and I have parents that are coming forward for the first time because they're terrified for their children and they're terrified for what's going on, and their kids are so scared. And they're telling me, you know, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I said, look, we're going to work through this together. We're going to work through this with your child. And you're going to go from what am I going to do to what wouldn't I do for my child? And to get them from fear into that survivor's mentality of what wouldn't I do, it changes things immensely, because they have so much more control. They can handle things on their terms. The stress goes down. And that's actually my favorite age group to work with is 0 to 6. So I get a lot of those calls from parents that, you know, are like me. You know, I can deal with anything. You know, a portal could open up in my kitchen and I'd be like, oh, just one more thing to deal with. Okay, just go around it, get the ketchup, you know. But when it's your babies that's going through, and, you know, your children, and especially, you know, like your best friends and things like that, that's when people start researching, and they want to come forward, and they're willing to do anything and seek out anything to, first of all, understand it. And if they can't understand it, then please, how do I keep them safe? How do I make this stop? So fighting that stigma and giving them that information, and using these case studies to write my survival guide that I'm writing, especially for individuals, you know, who are driven to the point of not wanting to live anymore, but families that have these kids that really just want to know how they can support them. And maybe, you know, you'll never live a normal life again, but you can still live a really happy, fulfilled life. So please listen to them. Please validate them. You know, if they're scared, you know, please take the time to try and reassure them. There's a lot of resources out there, and there's wonderful people like Tiffany. I've spoken to her daughter, Maddie. She's wonderful. I actually gave Maddie a little shout out at UFO Laughlin MegaCon. I showed one of the drawings that Maddie had made me. And kids with stories is my favorite. And everyone got to watch my daughter, because her birthday was the next day. I got the whole crowd to sing her happy birthday, and she was so happy. And she's running up and down the exhibition hall telling everybody about seeing the black-eyed children and, oh, there's a spirit over there and there's a spirit over there. And oh my gosh, you have a beautiful purple halo above your head. And then she would just take off running. So she was just a joy to everyone, and she's a joy to me. And the interaction between the children and the parents, I think, is the most important. It's just that I listen to her, I validate her. You know, if she wants to sit down and draw pictures, let's draw pictures. You want to sage the house, let's sage the house. And same thing with my 17-year-old. You know, she doesn't always know what's happening to her either. Yeah. And a lot of her experiences, I think, are directly related to stress. So we've gone through a lot of like meditation exercises. She also likes saging the house. You know, she likes talking about her past and her ghosts and her guardians and things like that. And her family and my daughter's father would both fit the criteria of experiencers, but neither of them believe in it and neither of them tolerate it.
Right.
So it's really important that they have someone, you know, whether it be a parent or maybe a very trusted teacher or a friend, just, you know, one person to talk to tell you that, no, you're not crazy. You're not weird. You're going to be in a better place. You just have to keep going, rather than living the kind of childhood and young adulthood I lived, where I just thought I was weird and that I wasn't meant to be happy and that just wasn't meant for me. And everybody likes to shake a stick at MUFON, but at least through MUFON, I got to meet a lot of really wonderful people and a lot of really wonderful colleagues, you know, including you and Mr. William Pullen and Mr. Steve Bounds. And just to have that community around me is amazing. And I'm so glad that I can give that to my daughters, and I can give that to every person that comes to me for preservation, and their children and their friends and the people they're trying to help, that, you know, there is more out there than just your experience and your fear and your confusion. Like, we can make our way through this, you know. You're going to be okay, but you have to keep going.
NK, thank you so much for that you shared with us, for what you do, and what a great mom you are. Tiffany, you as well. Race, would you bring on Kathleen and Denise with me right now? Wow, technology's something, right? So, two extraordinary statements from two remarkable, at our age, we can say young women. I want to ask both of you, because you've been involved, hyper involved in this for a long time as professionals. You're also both mothers. One thing that, let's say, I'm doing my best to build an audience, not just of the folks that listen to UFO and paranormal related programming, but of people who don't. So we have some viewers out there who are still kind of learning the ropes and who these individuals are in the field making the contributions. And if I were one of them and an open-minded, reasonable, rational skeptic, one of my first thoughts would be, I'm open to the possibilities that children are interacting, or other intelligences, non-human intelligences, are interacting with children. But, you know, when I was growing up, this could be pretty much covered by make-believe playmates and children's imagination. You know, are these women imposing some of their thinking on their children, or is this a real phenomena? And how would both of you be addressing some of the issues that Tiffany and NK have been so articulate about in the last half hour? Kathleen, I'm going to ask you to start out.
Okay. Well, I've had many parents contact me over the years for advice on what to do with their children. And we've sort of worked on this together, just brainstorming about it. Of course, you don't want to say that your child's experience was only a dream, because then if they know it wasn't a dream, that causes problems for them.
Tremendous potential.
But then you have to be concerned about their playmates and what their playmates carry home, and their classmates. And so it's not good. I have a background in psychiatric social work before I was an educator. And it's not good to have a closed family where you have family secrets in psychiatric social work anyway. That's the idea. So then how do you sort of integrate all of this conflicting information into your own family? It's very difficult. And so I think that it's probably best to tell the children, you can talk to me about this. We'll talk about it at home, but it's probably not a good idea to tell your classmates and teachers.
Yes.
And I think that, well, just to give an example of some things that have happened, I had parents who the father is an experiencer, and they took the little girl to the dentist, and the dentist found what looked like a drill mark in her molar, but he hadn't done it. And so the father contacted me and was talking about the daughter, and ETs do that. And I know that there are experiencers who have implants in their jaw. And so then I was wondering about that. But the mother said, there's no such thing as ET contact. I don't believe it. Don't tell your daughter, this man, don't tell your child that this could possibly be true. So then you have the parents. It's so difficult to know, for me at my age especially, to hide how to guide somebody. Younger people today are more open about this. It's more acceptable. But when I was growing up, it wasn't acceptable at all. It was a big family secret.
Yes.
And so what I think that it's really important for parents to accept what the children are doing. One family that came to MUFON had the idea of telling their little daughter that she should photograph these ETs who are coming to visit her. And she came out with the most remarkable photographs, just absolutely splendid.
Really?
Pictures. Oh, so intricate. It was just amazing what she got. There are others who, like the idea of using a little spray. So the child has a little spray bottle to push away anything they don't want in their room. So, I'm definitely not an expert on this. I work with adults, not with children, but that's my input.
Kathy, a quick follow-up question for you before we go to Denise. Talking about this being a closed subject when you were a child and an experiencer abductee with Betty and Barney Hill for your uncle and aunt. Do you remember when you first discussed this with your mother or father, what their response was, or when you understood that this was something not to discuss outside of the family?
Well, I was 17 when I had my first experience, as far as I know. And it was the result of an experiment that Betty was doing with a group of scientists to try to call in a craft to land on my grandparents' farm across the street from my childhood home.
Right.
And it landed, and my mother and I both remembered being taken.
Yeah.
But the attitude was, don't ever mention this. Don't even talk about it in the family. It's not okay. They don't want you to talk about it. The ETs don't want you to talk about it. So don't mention it. So you walk around with this secret welled up inside you.
Yes.
And that is difficult.
Yeah. Thank you. Denise, my friend, a lot to consider here. First, can I ask you your thoughts on, from your experience in this work, as an experiencer, as an abductee, as a professional, with background in education, psychology, government work, and being a mother. If somebody came to you and said, I'm fascinated by this whole UFO subject, and something may or may not have happened to me, but, it makes me really uncomfortable when I hear people encouraging children who, are having imaginary friends. They're 8, 9, 11 years old and still truly in childhood, and adults who are predisposed to the subject, encouraging to think that this is okay. Your first thought in responding to that question? Audio.
Oh,
Yeah, there you go.
can you hear me now?
I sure can.
Okay. Well, as a government worker, I was encouraged to cease and desist from what I was doing. At home, my parents were very open because I think they were having experiences themselves.
Sure.
But at one point, they wanted to think I'm just because that's what I felt, that I had a imaginary friend. And that's was difficult for me as a child because I knew that I was seeing this little monk-like character who came through my wallpaper and took me to be in a place that I didn't recognize with other children. So that was something that I dealt with as a child. And then my own daughter. She is different because she was born with cerebral palsy. She's also autistic. And so that combination can make things really, really difficult. However, I don't think she's ever been taken. If she's been visited, I suppose that's a possibility. We had paranormal activity in our home in Colorado, and a ghost showed up at night. My husband and I both woke up and saw this green, misty character, but the face was clear. And we had to observe this character for several nights until finally we decided we should discuss it with our daughter. And the way I brought that up to her was, do you see anyone at night here that's kind of bright, someone that you don't recognize? She says, oh, the green man. Oh, yeah, he kind of acts like a nightlight to me.
Oh.
So that was the end of that. Then
Wow.
Dee Dee, yeah, her name is Dee Dee, and she is very psychic. She, I suppose, because of her handicap, travels at night, and I've proven that she can come back with questions answered for me she knew nothing about. We did have to have a discussion with her about not passing this on to her social worker, caseworker, companion who does her driving. You just can't bring that up. Anything she knows about us or herself, because they are not going to understand in the slightest. They're going to blame it on what she has, cerebral palsy and autism. So it's been difficult, but we're at a stage in our lives now where she does really, really well and understands who to speak to about this and who not to.
Yeah. In your work, have you had an archetypical situation where a couple or an individual comes in who, for you, really checks out in all the classic respects as an abductee, or somebody who is a contactee or experiencer who expresses a concern for you based on just a normal, natural, parental concern, or because they have evidence or there is circumstantial evidence, or the child has said, mommy, the little men that come through the wall, when they've not been contaminated. And how do I deal with this? Is anything, a case or an individual or situation come to mind And can you share with us how you handled it or assisted that individual in interfacing with their kid on this?
Well, the first thing I like to do is try to ease their mind. And I let them know that at age 2.5, I had my first experience. I explained the circumstances to them and how I was not frightened at all because I thought what I saw in the sky, it was a UFO, but I thought it was Humpty Dumpty.
Oh.
So I was calm and I didn't understand why my grandfather came through, looked out the window and wanted to remove me from that room. I could see fear in his face and I still see it today as clear as I did then. And I wondered, why are you afraid of Humpty Dumpty? Even 2.5, I could think that out. And then I wondered, why doesn't Humpty Dumpty have a face? Because it was a big glowing egg-shaped object outside my window. I wasn't afraid. I went to bed and I went to look in my wallpaper that was full of nursery rhyme characters, and I couldn't find him there. So I thought, well, that's because he's up in the sky. So I try to speak to parents who come to me that perhaps their children are having experiences, but don't exhibit any real fear. I give them my example.
Got it.
So if they have fear to deal with because they're frightened and therefore their children are frightened, I approach it from a little different angle, but I still try to make sure that they can calm down, give them ideas on how to do that, that they don't need to feel that because they're here. They haven't been taken and haven't been returned. They're here, and we can begin to take step by step ways and methods to ease this circumstance for them and for their children.
Thank you. Race, can I ask you to bring back Deb, NK, and Tiffany so we're all back on screen together? Bang. All right. We're coming into our final 20 minutes, obviously having our own missing time experience. It's flying at an accelerated rate of speed, as it does when you have extraordinary, insightful people sharing their thoughts. There is more and more research, anecdotal as well as actual. Some of you know this from your own experience, some from deliberate study. And we've seen aspects of this being published now, that people who have had UFO contact experiences or abductees seem to have a higher incidence of psychic abilities, everything from telekinesis to precognition to a sense of telepathy to such hyper extraordinary empathy. Every aspect of paranormal activity kind of comes into this in one way or another. I think approaching it as devil's advocate and with a sense of deductive reasoning of always trying to go for the most mundane explanation, look at it from all sides. If it doesn't pan out, go to the second most mundane one and work your way up the ladder. And if nothing fits, then at a certain point, things get really interesting. That once you've had one of these life-changing experiences, you start to notice more in yourself, in the world around you. For me, if you pay attention to coincidences, you observe more and more complex ones, and the aspect of synchronicity kind of as a force in the universe. So each of you, for a few minutes each, I'd like to know your thoughts on this and your experience or what you have come to observe in others. And Deb, I'm going to ask you first.
I have definitely gotten more sensitive as I've gotten older and more aware of the world around me. I feel like I'm not sure if it's something that happened to me in utero or something that happened to me as a result of the initial contact when I was a kid, but something inside my mind, somebody flipped the switch somewhere at some time. And I feel like I have an extra I got an extra circuit board up here or something. You know what I mean? I've always been empathic and struggled with it when I was a kid. And I had I was diagnosed with anxiety and generalized anxiety when I was really young, even before I had a lot of wild stuff happen to me. And God knows I've had plenty of wild stuff happen to me, not only in paranormal and UFO related stuff, but life, has thrown me a couple big curve balls.
Your health history.
Yeah, that. But I feel like I definitely feel as if I have the ability to sense people. I can walk past someone in a store, and if they're creepy enough, I can feel it immediately, and I shudder as I walk by. I can literally feel it. If a friend walks up behind me and I can't see them, but if they get in my space, and I can feel them, I know who it is before I turn around. Now, if it's someone I don't know them, but I know it's someone I don't know. I don't recognize it. To me, energy is like a fingerprint. Everybody's is different, just a little bit. And I can sense that, I can feel that in other people. And I feel like the reason I'm the way I am now with this sort of thing and others is because of these experiences, or maybe I was this way and that's what attracted these experiences to me. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. But
that's all we can do. Tiffany, your thoughts on this and your experience or your observations of others?
I feel that a lot of times we have these antennas, and I say that because I've been taken over. My whole house is full of praying mantis, and they have been for almost 7 years. So I feel like I have the antennas as well, and that's why they chose me.
Our favorite insects.
So, and of course, the praying mantis, we think about the praying mantis looking like this alien being. And I sort of always think like N.K. Kranda we've talked about this before. We feel like we have these witchy abilities. And that's how my family sort of thought about it long time ago. They're like, oh, they're sort of witches. They're witches. If they say don't go out, you don't go out because something bad is going to happen. And it's like, my mom, she's one of 6 girls and 9 kids. And all of the women in the family, if one says, don't do it, you better watch it, because there's a reason that they're saying it. And sometimes, it pops out before we even process. And I think that's that inner antenna that we have. And it has been amplified since I started having these experiences. And you can relate it and use it in so many aspects of your life if you listen. So I've learned to listen to what the universe has given me, and that can be coincidence, synchronicity, whatever you want to use as a term for this gift. And it can be a curse as well. It can really ruin your life if you don't take it head on and tackle it and try to understand and see how it is supposed to help you through your daily life. This is something that can be turned around and used to our advantage to help guide other people. And I think that's what everybody in this panel is involved in doing.
Yes.
We need to advocate for the newcomers, the children that are coming up, the families who are going through it for the first time.
That's right.
And it's important. This is a part of the human condition. We are being programmed to survive the next part of this cultural and worldly experience. Yeah. So that's how I relate it. And I we've talked about how you can tamper with somebody's growth pattern by saying, oh, it's aliens, and not really having an understanding of what that is, or trying to put it in a box. I think that the best part is to listen. That's the most important part. Yeah. Listen, and then help process, reach out to people who've gone through these experiences and try to prepare the next generation for what they're going to experience, what they're going through. All I can say is, based on my experience, I can only give this much information to my daughters, but they're already starting to have their experiences. And, if sage in your house helps them feel more secure and in charge of the situation, by God, do it. Help them have a prayer, have a connection to their higher self and these beings, and do it in a way that you can create a better person and a better experience. I didn't know all of this stuff was going on with my family until I came out on KGRA last year. I hadn't talked to them about it. I didn't want to be the crazy person. But as soon as I came out and said this and started sharing my stories, they were like, "Oh, really? I thought I was the only one that had that happen." And now it's reaching out to my first cousins and my second cousins and, their children. And it's a big circle. There is a pattern here, and we are all involved on some level to some degree.
Amen. NK, your thoughts on connections between people who have contact abduction experiences and the paranormal connections, and then to extrapolate a bit on just what Tiffany was saying.
You're on mute.
Mute.
There we go.
There we go.
It's like following the Beatles. You're making me follow Tiffany Mack.
Give it to him, NK.
Trial by fire.
No, she really hit the nail on the head. I didn't know that my family was like this either, that the women in my family had these sensitivities. But I think for me, the real catalyst, just the match thrown into the gasoline for me, was trauma. And learning about trauma and going to cognitive behavioral therapy and prolonged exposure therapy and trying to get through this to be a better parent, because I didn't want to continue the abuse cycle with my children. That was really important to me, being raised by two alcoholic drug addicts. I'm like, I'm not going to do this to my daughter. This is going to be different. Yeah. What I really came to find out is that the people that I was talking to and the people that I was doing preservations with, trauma and their experiences were almost interlinked every single time. I've rarely ever heard someone say, I've had a wonderful childhood, a happy life, a great career. I saw a UFO. It was great. That was it. And I'm proud of you. Cool. Good for you. It's usually much darker than that. And I commend all of you for having the heart and the patience and the time to let these people reach out to you and tell their story, because it's certainly not easy hearing some of the things that they have to say. But for me, the trauma connection and learning about the way the brain works and the way that your neurons will physically rearrange themselves to avoid that place of trauma, because your brain's only job is to keep you safe. And I was thinking, like, well, maybe we're kind of like rewiring a radio here, and that trauma is rearranging our neurons. Are we waking up some kind of DNA? Are we channeling into something we don't know? Are we picking up some different kind of vibrations or something that we haven't done before? So I think that it's the trauma, that these sensitive kids, something traumatic happens and then it just explodes. So that's certainly the case for me. It has been for my experiencers. That's why I'm writing my survival guide, because I really want these people to keep going. I just want them to keep going so bad. And being one of the only researchers that keeps track of the suicide rate is just really heartbreaking, because nobody knows how hard it is and how alone they are. And it really is the loneliest existence there is. Like, I don't have to imagine it because I used to live it. Yeah. So just to keep everybody going. And to cap off my answer, I had a experience in a Detroit airport, and I had just, everything had gone wrong. All of the flights, all of the everything, all of the food. My debit card got stolen. I ended up getting food poisoning. I threw up in a trash can. It was just awful. It was awful. And I was standing in the middle of Detroit airport, and I said, this is it. I'm never traveling again. I'm not doing another conference. I'm not doing another writer's retreat. The book, I don't care. I'm like, I'm done. And I turned around, and not even 10 seconds later, I took a picture of it. A gentleman wore a t-shirt, and it said, "Everything not saved will be lost. Quit screen." And I was like, really, universe? I can't even quit for 30 seconds. You have to just be right there with your synchronicity in that t-shirt. Rude. But no, I got it. I got the synchronicity. Like, you may not like this work. It's not always going to be fun, but it matters. And every little ripple that you make is going to keep getting bigger. And every little butterfly that you send out there is going to keep going. So that's why I try. That's why, I don't break down and cry in airports, and I just keep going. You got to keep going.
I'm bowled over, actually. You are all such an inspiration and such a resource. I'd like to bring us all back together in a few months. If one of you is unable to do it, we'll do our best to find somebody else that can fill your shoes. This has been a particularly important and special 2 hours for me as a radio host. As in almost every other aspect of life, a panel discussion usually means a panel discussion of guys, and maybe every once in a while having a woman in there. I grew up in a family where my earliest memories were about loving, respecting, and enjoying women as friends, and I know it was the best thing that ever happened to me. All the work that you are doing is important, and how interesting it is after almost 2 hours that have flown by to realize how synchronous the work that you're all doing is to each other, just at sort of different stages of the game. I want to mention at this point just a couple of pieces of housekeeping, basically. Kathleen, your book with the late, great Stanton T. Friedman, whose birthday it was like 2 days ago and who we missed terribly, but we're lucky to have our memories of that great guy and that great man. This is such an important book. And I'm trying to think back in terms of UFO publishing to a book about, to be dispassionate, a famous case and the individuals involved, written by somebody who couldn't possibly be closer to the case, and a researcher who really in his own right had earned the same respect. We have here, this is your newest or your second newest book here?
Well, the 60th anniversary edition of Captured is the newest, but this is the newest.
Okay. And I go through these with apologies to you, NK and Deb, for completely blanking you out. Sorry about that. Fact Fiction and Flying Saucers. This is a book not only that I've enjoyed reading, but one that I've given several times as gifts to people who are somewhat contemptuous of UFO books, and it's put them in their place very nicely. We have Science Was Wrong by you and Stan again, another wonderful compendium of, in the broader picture, how goofy some of the decisions are that so-called, figures in authority in science have, with great straight faces, taken seriously. And of course, the remarkable book that you both, Denise and Kathleen, have written, one that I recommend for any library where you have even a basic interest in this subject. Deb, of course, you and I met, Christ, what was it, 1943 or something?
Yeah. Okay.
It's a while back. The photos of us together back at that time at, Bud Hopkins' first support group meetings, we're such kids. I mean,
we
it
look
really,
like teenagers.
Well, and this book is one of the greatest case studies of all time. Even if it weren't about one of my favorite people on the planet, it's a remarkably important book. And if you read it, you will immediately understand upon finishing it why it became a national and then an international bestseller, and then why CBS optioned it and made it into a terrific miniseries. Also now, published only a month or so ago by our dear friend Robbie Graham, who is the director of August Night Press in London, a wonderful small press. Your book, that is, I mean, I had the honor for the first time in my life not to be asked to write a foreword, but an afterword. And my first thought was, well, how do you do that? And then I figured it out. And it gave me an opportunity to do something where I could really say something personal about our relationship and underscore how important the book is. We are actually coming right down to the wire right now. I can't thank you enough. My guests tonight have been Tiffany Mack, N.K. Kranda, Deb White-Kauble, Denise Stoner, and of course, Kathleen Marden. We will be back. Next week's guest is Christopher Munch. He's an independent filmmaker, writer, and director. Chris is the auteur behind 6 outstanding independent films over the last several decades, and director of Letters from the Big Man, a film about Sasquatch that will completely surprise you, and a film that caught me completely off guard called The 11th Green, a remarkable and remarkably original film about President Eisenhower and the alien presence. Your homework for next week's show, should you choose to participate in it, is to watch The 11th Green. It's streaming currently on Amazon Prime and IMDb. If you've enjoyed the show, please tell your friends. This is Peter Robbins, and until next week, stay well, stand up for what you believe in, and be kind to each other.